Welcome and thank you for joining part 2 of our webinar series, Empowering Women Leaders in Environmental Health. I'm Christy Denbrock, Chief Learning Officer at NEHA. As the environmental health workforce continues to experience a growing majority of women entering the field, this series aims to foster the next generation of strong, capable leaders. We are joined today by members of the Trebuchet Group who will discuss principles of leadership, emphasizing strategic communication, problem solving, decision making, and explore how to navigate imposter syndrome, inspire teams, and cultivate an environment that promotes growth and retention. Please feel free to write any questions or comments into the chat box and we will address them. Let's welcome Erin Hottenstein, Senior Advisor at the Trebuchet Group, and Katie Huey, Client Success Coordinator and Coach at the Trebuchet Group. If you are not a NEHA member and enjoy this session, we invite you to become one at neha.org. Katie, would you like to start us off? We have a full agenda.
Good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you are in the world. Thank you so much for spending an hour with us. I'd love to see if you want to put where you're calling in from in the chat. It's fun to see who's in the room. Erin and I are so excited for this important conversation. And I will note one thing about Trebuchet Group, even though we're webinar facing, we love the interaction. So we really encourage questions and comments in the chat, and we'll go from there. Erin, thanks for sharing the slides. If you want to bring up our overview of what we're going to focus on today, we have a full packed agenda. So like I said, we love the interaction. There's a couple things we hope you can be focused with us today. And I know many of you are juggling a lot. So let's talk about what we need to set up for success. If you can bring up those bullet points, that'd be great. We are going to dive into what is leadership and how do we define that? And what are some of the things that get in the way? We talk about imposter syndrome. Many of us have heard that phrase these days, but what does that mean for us and how do we change our mindsets? We'll have a group conversation around leadership with some individual reflection. But then if there's time, decide what to do next. You'll walk away with one action step, at least one, and figure out what you want your implementation plan to be. And we'll wrap up with questions at the end. So the outcomes, hopefully you'll be able to recognize imposter syndrome, what that means for you, and maybe if you're leading others. How do we tame self-doubt and find our own confidence, which can be particularly challenging. And then we're going to walk through 5 leadership myths. How do we bust out of those myths that can thwart our potential, some of the things that hold us back. And hopefully you'll have some opportunities to cross-connect with other women in the field. Again, use that chat to interact with each other, make comments, and follow up with people at the end. We do, a lot of times you'll talk about ground rules or expectations, norms for our meeting. We like to change that language a little bit. So in order to play along with us today, we really hope that you are here because you want to learn, teach, share, and be involved. This is not a one-way or two-way street. We really believe that leaders have nothing to hide. There are no conversations that are too scary to embark upon with a little bit of guidance. You also are a person who doesn't want to manipulate and control people. That's a leadership style that we have found to be not as effective. And is there one more? Again, that ties in well. We have a sincere belief in people and we're rooted in mutual respect and trust. So as we embark upon these conversations, hopefully these are things that you can agree to. I know we can't quite see you, but if you got a quick thumbs up, that's going to be a great place for us to start. So I want to do a quick poll. And Michelle, if you can launch that poll, there's a 3-question survey to figure out who is in the room, a little bit more about your experience. So take a second to fill those out. We'll see who's in the room here with us. And Michelle, I'll rely on you when you've got like a bulk of participant answers. I can't quite see the results rolling in. And when you're done with that, I will have another quick question for you, but let's start just with these answers.
So
Okay,
Kate, you can't see the
showing right.
answers?
Maybe I have to fill it out. It says hosts and panelists can't vote. I can see the questions, but I can't see the responses.
I can see them, Katie.
Christy, do you want to
So what
speak
we
to
have
those?
now is the Make It Happen contributor is at 58%. The supervisor is at 52%. Middle manager is at 14%. And senior is at 2%. And C-level leader is just still showing 0.
Great. So a lot of contributors and a lot of supervisors. How about the
So
size of the organization?
Yes, the size of the organization, small is 22%, medium is 40%, and large is 38.
Awesome. That's a great spread. And how about
And how
tenure?
long have you been in your role? 0 to 3 years is 48%, 4 to 10 years is 32%, and 10 years plus is 19.
That's also a great spread. One of the statistics we hear all the time is that people are in a leadership role almost 8 years before they get any formal training or support. So for those who are in those 0 to 10, bravo for you for showing up and getting some development. Thanks so much for filling that out. And we're going to just do a quick purpose question. So if you can answer in the chat, why is being here important to you, your organization, and your community? And I'll put this in the chat as well, hopefully. Let's see if I can share this with everyone. Why is being here important to you, your organization, and your community? In 1 to 2 sentences. One of the rare women in the water industry over 40. Only be of service if I show up best version of myself. Some themes of stress, themes of desired growth. That's great. Thanks for filling these out. I'm seeing some themes of growth mindset too. Gain confidence, overcome imposter syndrome. Excellent. Well, you are all hopefully in the right place for the conversation that we're going to have today. Being a leader that creates other leaders. Yeah, that always inspires me as well. So with that, I am going to hand the baton to Erin, and we're going to have a little bit of a conversation about imposter syndrome, and we'll continue going forward. Thanks, everybody.
Yes. So I know before we jump into definitions of imposter syndrome, we thought we'd start with a story. And so I want to invite Katie to share her own story about this before I go on the slide. So Katie?
Oh, fair enough. I forgot about the passing back and forth. Yeah, so 2 years ago, I was sitting in a normal team meeting, expecting to do some group planning with our small team as our bosses and leaders were getting ready to leave for a 4-month sabbatical, which in a small organization is a big impact when 2 founders take the time to get rest and restoration. And so I was just sitting there expecting to go over some spreadsheets and talk about some role definition and who is going to do what. When all of a sudden I heard the comment, Katie, we think you are ready to be interim COO. And I instantly started sweating. And I could feel it was those moments where I was like, are you waving at someone behind me? Like you're pointing at me. And it was a very profound moment in my career where I suddenly felt small and like I didn't want to be looked at. And I think I said, excuse me? And they said, yeah, we think you are ready to really step in and fill the administrative gaps in our exit. And it was one of the first times in my career where I felt like, you want me to do what? And so I felt very reluctant. And even as I talk about it, my voice gets quieter. I can feel my shoulders shrinking. Really not sure if I was cut out for the job.
Thank you, Katie. Thanks for and thanks for sharing vulnerably about what that was like. I imagine that a lot of folks in the audience can relate to that. And actually, so I'd like to turn to another question in the chat, which is what do you think is imposter syndrome? Like what symptoms show up for you, or what behaviors do you notice when you're feeling like an imposter? So I see self-doubt, yes, for sure. And Katie shared that in her story too. Anxiety and stress, yep. Fear, questioning, am I deserving of this opportunity? Yeah, for sure. Being told I'm not as good as a man, rumination, yeah. Failing once means that you're failing forever. Oh my gosh. Yeah, you guys, you're doing a great job in the chat. Feeling you need to prove your point rather than just saying it and letting it just be as an equal as other inputs. Yeah. So thank you for sharing all those in the chat. That's a jump start to our conversation here. So the definition, I want to get into a little bit of a definition. So one aspect of imposter syndrome is minimizing evidence of success. And so the behaviors that we might see in our own self-talk, or as leaders, we might see this in members of our team, is that we or they are chalking it up to luck. Oh, well, anybody could have done that. It just, I happen to be in the right place at the right time. So minimizing it that way. Another way to minimize things is to give credit to other people, like as if you couldn't have done it yourself, that it's because of other people's contributions that the success happened. And another aspect is secretly believing that you're fooling others and that you'll be found out at any moment. So you can see here that we've got a lot of deflecting, like you have success and you're deflecting it in different ways. And then on the inside, you're secretly believing that that people, if they only knew, they would like get rid of you. They wouldn't trust you with these kinds of responsibilities. And I found this cute little cartoon that says, "This is Dr. Adams. She's a social psychologist and the world's top expert on imposter syndrome." And the other character says, "Ha ha ha, don't be silly. There are lots of scholars who have made more significant." Oh my God. So that's kind of what we do, right? We dismiss it, laugh it off, make it seem like someone else's success. So let's go on. So I think the fun thing about this is that imposter syndrome is actually found amongst high achievers. So if you are feeling imposter syndrome, weirdly, that should make you feel better because that means you're a high achiever. So we have some studies that I was looking at. So according to a 2020 KPMG study of 750 high-performing senior women leaders in Fortune 1000 companies, 75% of them had personally experienced imposter syndrome at certain points in their career. And interestingly, 57% of those surveyed said they most often experienced it when they were promoted or when they were making transitions to new roles. And I can say for me, I won't share a whole story, but I came to Trebuchet Group almost 4 years ago. And I will say I felt a lot of self-doubt starting a new job. It's like, oh my gosh, can I do this? Like, I'm not sure what to do here. So I definitely resonated, that part resonated for me a lot, and maybe it will for you too. So what does imposter syndrome look like? We got some of those answers in the chat already, but let's go over a few more that I found when I was researching this. Over preparing. And even before I looked into the research, Katie and I were talking about this, and I was like, oh, you know what women do? They over prepare. They think they have to, read everything and know everything before they go into the meeting, know exactly what they're going to say. And that, I think that women do that a lot. They over
Or
prepare.
just get one more certification.
Just one more certification. Another thing is, right, because we're experiencing that self-doubt, we may not speak up in meetings. Because we don't want to be found out, we may be unwilling to seek help. Say like, oh, I'm struggling, I'm not sure about this, and reach out for help. Another behavior that it might look like, or a feeling, is that you have anxiety over small mistakes. I saw someone in the chat said rumination, right? Like we just can't let it go. Like, oh my God, I can't believe I did that or said that. Um, is there a thing as too many certifications? Well, I don't know. You tell me. And then I also resonated with this one, procrastinating. And I'm wondering if some of you have noticed that, like you just can't get started on a big project because it's like you're frozen in fear and you just feel overwhelmed about how to start. And so you just don't start. So those can be some feelings or behaviors that you can look for to know, to give you a clue that you might be experiencing imposter syndrome. As leaders and supervisors and managers, these are things we also want to look out for in our teams. And so whether you're a leader or an aspiring leader, when folks are driving themselves so hard to be perfect, to have everything just right, then that can lead to a lack of work-life balance. It can lead to burnout because they are, staying up late, working on weekends to make sure everything is just so. And unfortunately, that leads to decreased job satisfaction over time and can exacerbate behavioral health issues that we may be having. So really important to think about, identifying this in ourselves and others so that we can have a fulfilling and sustainable career and not drive ourselves to burnout and, other kinds of issues. So what can we do? So again, I'd love to hear anything in the chat. If you have experienced imposter syndrome, and you don't even have to call it that, maybe it's just self-doubt or fear at some point, like what has helped you to move forward or to get unstuck? I'd love to hear some ideas about that. You're feeling like imposters right now, or else it's taking a while to type. No, just kidding. All right. Having a mentor in the field to discuss things with, attending webinars. Yeah, starting with something small, right? Take that next step. Just go for it. Positive affirmations. Oh, I like this. Trusting higher ups that they picked me for a reason, right? Sometimes we have those moments when we don't trust ourselves or believe in ourselves, but we can look for, those affirmations from other people. Speaking to other women in supervisory roles, reminding myself of times that it worked out, time and experience, saying yes to more opportunities. Yes, yes. CBT, so I'm assuming you mean cognitive behavioral therapy there. Yes, that can help. That's a form of therapy that can help. Just go on a walk. Katie knows I do that a lot. Like every day I try to, every afternoon, get away from the computer. So lots of good ideas in the chat. Keep them coming. yeah, I thought this was a good place for us to crowdsource and get ideas from each other and connect in the chat. Um, so what we would suggest is interrupt the negative self-talk. So you've seen some different ways of doing that that were already mentioned in the chat, but just even noticing that, you've got a script running in your mind that, you're saying not nice things about yourself to yourself. Like, how can you stop that? And so different ideas in the chat, right? Go for a walk, remind yourself, talk to someone else. And those are all great. So along the same lines, tell yourself something true that is positive. And so when I'm saying this, sometimes we hear some affirmations and I know some of these are parodies and stuff like that, but I am the best at everything all the time is not a great affirmation. Because you swing from I'm terrible to I'm the best, and it's really not helpful. What I would recommend is finding something in the middle that you can really stand on. Like, I have valuable experience to share with my team. Or I have really studied up on this, and I think I have some good options to offer the group. So it is things that are true, that are not exaggerated in any way, but something that you can really feel solid about saying to yourself. And then I love this this cartoon that we found. So for example, the negative self-talk would be, I don't deserve to be here. And then this echoes some of what we saw in the chat. I trust the judgment of those who invited me. And I'm here because I earned it, right? Not because of luck, not because somebody helped me out, but because I earned it. So just saying something like that that you can stand on is really helpful. All right. So what else can we do? And here again, I'm both speaking to individual contributors and also to leaders. Normalize it, right? Say to yourself, or if you're a leader, say to others, oh my gosh, I totally get it. We have all been there. This is something that lots of people go through, and it's totally normal that it's happening. And so I think speaking that into the room is very important, like saying that to people you're supervising or saying it, in one-on-ones or groups that you're in. It really helps it be like we're all humans together. And 75% of people, have gone through this. Another thing that you can try is to ask, what is the worst that could happen? Okay, I'm in a meeting. I think I have something to share. What's the worst that can happen if I speak up right now? So, or, what's the worst that could happen if I, bring up a different idea or, suggest this other way of doing things? So that might be a way for you and that goes to the third bullet, which is assess the risk and make intentional choices. Like, are you feeling prepared and confident? Then maybe there's a pretty low risk that 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 you would say something embarrassing or something like that. But it also helps you kind of do an environmental scan of the room, like who's here and what have they offered up, and what can I bring to the table? Do you think you can bring something? Then great, then let's do it. All right. And I'm not closely monitoring the chat, so Katie, if you need to interrupt me at any point, then just let me know.
Yeah, there's some great examples, things to think about in terms of what you can say and how you can reframe some of your thoughts. So I won't call them all out, but scan through the chat. There's some great ones.
Awesome. Cool. All right. So I do want to bring up a little thing that could be in the back of some of our minds, which is unconscious bias and various isms. I think it is possible that a person could be experiencing imposter syndrome and be experiencing racism, sexism, ableism, or ageism. Or it could be one or the other. It could be that you're starting to feel like an imposter because you are experiencing microaggressions in your workplace. And so I just wanted to say that there might be a little bit of a distinction there. If you have both together, you both feel like an imposter and you're experiencing some kind of microaggressions or, little sideways comments about being a woman or something like that, then that just makes it worse, right? And when that kind of piling on is happening, it's just really even more important to shift your mindset. So one thing I want to offer up is to be aware of the environment, find support, and choose your battles. So for example, if you're walking into a meeting that's kind of hostile, then you get to decide, like, am I ready to go after this today? Or, and it is time for me to speak up, or is today not the day, or it's not the right meeting to do this? Um, I would suggest, as a tip for you, to learn how to speak up in meetings and to find ways to let people know what you are accomplishing. Men do seem to be better at this, sort of just narrating the things that they're doing and accomplishing, whereas women, I think, tend to be more silent on that. Not always, but just kind of as a generality. Um, so I would invite you into that space to learn to speak up. And I want to say that I recognize that people could be experiencing bias. And so, get support and decide whether it's worth it in any given moment to confront that. All right. So we're going to turn now to the lead. Thus ends the imposter syndrome part of our conversation, and we are moving into the leadership part of our conversation. And so I would like to invite you to think about some famous or even notorious leaders. So, for example, Mark Zuckerberg, Oprah Winfrey. If you are a little bit older, maybe you remember Lee Iacocca or Margaret Thatcher. In the sports world, Peyton Manning or Billie Jean King. And in the public health world, I was just reading a book that I'll share with you at the end that had some wonderful profiles in it of Dr. Mona Hanna-Attisha in Flint, Michigan, and Mary Engel Pennington, who pioneered food safety practices. So those are a few that I was thinking of, but maybe you can think of some even closer to home. So as you're thinking about those types of people, what qualities would you say that leaders possess? When you think of those leaders, what qualities do they possess? Like, what is that leadership? And I'd love to see a few ideas in the chat. Lifting others up, fearless, compassion, available, supportive. Yep. Vulnerability, empathy, confidence, supportive, curiosity. Wonderful. Yep. Good listener. I like all those. Some other ones that I would throw out there are persuasion and influence. That somehow they're able to get willing followers, and that as a result that everybody's better as a result. I don't think I've seen it in the chat yet, but mission, the folks who are mission driven and people oriented, we have. All right, encourages others, enthusiasm. Yeah. I see the comment about some terrible leaders work through fear. That is not a model that we're going to promote today. That is not a model that we believe is effective. And so we're going to encourage you to explore a different kind of leadership because we don't think that's so great. And we can also see that. I mean, the number one reason that people leave jobs is because of a bad boss. So that is not the kind of leadership that we're talking about. Just kidding. All right. So we are going to do an exercise right now. So I'd invite you to grab a pen, or you can use your computer if you want. This is just for you, but we'd like you to think about some questions. What are the behaviors of leaders you have followed or follow willingly? And then, thinking to yourself, how much are you living these today? And what leadership behaviors hold you and others back? Lastly, how much would you follow you? So I'm going to turn on some music here and just give you a couple of minutes to reflect on these questions for yourself. All right, about another 10 seconds to wrap up what you're writing. I didn't mean to restart it. Okay. All right, so I'd love to hear your thoughts in the chat. What are some of the behaviors or qualities of leaders you have followed willingly? Let's start with those, and then I'd love to move on to some of the other questions. Honesty, trustworthy, influence, drive, empathy, demonstrate what they expect. Yes, right? Modeling, so important. That they're well-informed and strategic. Challenge me to think through problems myself. Excellent. Yes. Create connection through trust, positive attitude. Yes, clear and specific expectations. Contagious smile and a great sense of humor. Love it. Values driven. Humble. Yep. Empathetic, allow to grow, give staff opportunities. Open door, never afraid to ask a question. Yeah, so I think we're talking some about creating safety in the workplace. Great. So what leadership behaviors do you think hold you or others back? Like, what do you not want to see in a leader? Or what do you think is holding you back in leadership? Fear, silos, lack of transparency, dismissive. Ooh, questioning your integrity, micromanaging. Yep, micromanaging. Check, check. Oh, and they're bully or cagey or angry. Confusing instructions. Yeah, gatekeeping, favoritism. Yeah, my favorite highway. Yeah, I love these. Yeah,
Indecisive showed up a few times.
indecisive. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, so I think it's good to think about like what great leadership looks like and what not great leadership looks like as we're going into this next section about busting myths. Um, Katie, do I have the first one?
You do.
I do. All right. So I will. Oh, no, 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 we don't need the music. All right. It was lovely, but let's move on. All right. So, first myth, I must know what I am doing all of the time. So, whether you're experiencing imposter syndrome or not, sometimes we just hold ourselves to very high, if not impossible standards. And so when you are holding yourself in that space, it's very easy to get into what I call the bossy boss. And you're like, it's kind of looking down on people or a wagging of the finger at people, like, well, I'm the boss, so therefore I will tell you what to do. Um, and it's really very disconnecting. And yet, especially when we're first moving into a supervisory or manager role, we feel like I should know what I'm doing and I should be the boss and I should act like a boss. And what I would invite you to, oh, I'm moving on to a different myth, aren't I?
You're on number 3, but
I'm on
I was
number
going to see how
three.
you were going to roll with it. They tie into each other. It's okay.
All right, well, you don't have to know what you're doing all the time. And it ties so well into another one. And I will stop now so that we can go to Katie's.
Yeah. I will add for myth number 1 real quick. We were just at a conference with Adam Grant, and he was talking about one of the best leadership qualities when you don't know what to do is to do it afraid. And so I think there's a fine line between leading with fear versus like saying, wow, I'm feeling afraid and I'm going to do it every way anyway. And I think that ties in with myth number 2. I must master every task and process. And author Anne Lamott, in one of her latest books, actually shares a story where she's trying to navigate the health system for her mother who has Alzheimer's. And she's sitting on the edge of the bed and she's got her head in her hands and she's just saying, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. And the nurse comes and sits next to her and puts a hand on her shoulder and says, honey, you've never done this before. Why would you know what to do? And I think a lot of times when we find ourselves in situations where we put ourselves there, or people see something in us and we want to grow, we have to give ourselves the grace to say, I've never done this before. And so I'm going to try it and I'm going to learn and I'm going to experiment. And if you are leading others or if you're in a peer relationship, you can be that person who comes and sits gently and puts a hand on and says, you've never done it before. Let's figure it out together. And that's very different than some of the shame that comes with, I don't have the answer. One of my secrets of adulthood is like very few people actually have the answer. We're all just experimenting, and we can use our wisdom and our guidance and look out for each other. So how can you have a growth mindset and say, I've never done this before, but I'm going to use my skills to try to figure out this next thing.
All right. Thanks, Katie. That is an excellent point. All right. Myth number 3. Yes, I know I mushed this together with myth number 1, but I must show them who's the boss. So I already said a little bit about that. But what I want to share instead is a little bit of what you can do instead, and that is to share some things about yourself. Spend time together, admit your mistakes. A really good leaders lead the way in vulnerability-based trust, which means that they feel comfortable sharing their own mistakes or asking for help. And when they do that, that allows the rest of the team, sometimes we call it the psychological safety, to also be able to admit their mistakes and ask for help. And when you do that, it really allows people to have this feeling like we can have each other's back. because we all know that we're human and we're not perfect all the time. So I would invite you, instead of being, higher than and lower than in a leadership position, to really try and be more on the same level and recognizing that we're all human. All right, and back over to Katie.
A lot of times we are told, especially as women, that we should not be argumentative or disagreeable. If we show up in a certain assertive way, we're going to have be perceived as rude, arrogant, or worse. But the truth is that the word conflict can actually be a really powerful tool, both in leadership and on teams. And when I say that, like many people that we talk to shudder. Like, we are not supposed to have conflict. We're supposed to be nice. We're supposed to get along. It's my job to make people happy. But again, the reality is that conflict is on a spectrum, and good leaders encourage disagreement. So a lot of times, on the far left, you've got maybe the leave it to beavers, that we're so nice. We call it the disease of niceness, where we all get along, but nobody actually talks about what's really happening. And we're going to just be kind to one another. And the other side is personal attacks. We had one leader who was like, I cannot do conflict. I once had someone who, when they were upset in meetings, would throw staplers at people. So we have, these really intense experiences, both personally and professionally, that can inform what we believe to be is true about conflict. So good leaders establish norms on how we're going to work together when things happen that we disagree about. Because if you're all moving forward without agreement, there's actually probably a sign that there's going to be some quiet rumblings or some meetings after the meeting. So how can you establish norms and how you want to work together and encourage disagreement? You want that sweet spot in the middle about healthy conflict where people can say, actually, I see it differently. And one of the tools that we were just given from a facilitator named Caitlin Walker is the question, who sees it differently? Rather than, don't you agree? Or don't you think we should? And that one shift, moving from who sees it differently, opens up the conversation for a little bit more discussion, not even disagreement, just discussion.
Yeah. Yeah, if you want to get the best ideas on the table, then you need to go have a little back and forth about it. Thanks, Katie. All right, and then our last myth is that we must achieve consensus. And this slide was already in the deck when I last Friday met with someone, and he happened to share that when he became a new manager, he struggled for a long time because he thought that he should achieve consensus. And when he couldn't achieve consensus, then the group was stuck kind of spinning for a long time. So don't get stuck in overanalyzing or trying to resolve every little thing when you're working with your teams. There are pros and cons to collaboration. So you want the pros of more voices, seeing different angles like Katie was just talking about, because that can help you lead to better decisions. But the cons can be you can get into spinning, you may not have enough time, or the topic might not even be important enough to come to consensus on, really. And really what you need is commitment. So not everybody has to agree, but they do need to commit. And you can do that, early in the process, and then try it out, and then, keep committing to it, coming back to it. And we call it using your thumb. So here's another really practical tool that we wanted to share with you in today's webinar. So there's up, sideways, and down. Up means I 100% agree and I 100% commit. Make sense? Down is I cannot agree and I cannot commit. There is a flaw in this plan. You haven't heard me, that I'm afraid it's going to fail, and we need to address that situation, mitigate it, account for it, something. So you need to express yourself that way. Sideways is I don't 100% agree, but I will 100% commit. So why this is interesting is that maybe you feel like this is not the perfect plan. It's, there's not as much information as you would like, or, you're not quite sure about things, but you know what? You are going to give it your all. What you are not going to do is go back to your office and talk smack or cross your arms and say how it's going to fail. And you're just going to hang out back here and wait till it fails. I don't know if you've ever seen that before. You're going to lean in, you're going to, give the information, you're not going to withhold, you're going to provide what needs to be provided in a timely way, because you are 100% committed, even if you're not totally sure that it's the awesomest plan. And so that's what we're talking about commitment and why commitment is so important. So as a leader, instead of looking for consensus, look for commitment. So that's a big piece that we wanted to give you today. All right, so I think we're ready to talk about Q&A and deciding what's next, right, Katie?
Yep. Let's open up the floor. I don't know if there's questions, Michelle, or you can put your questions in the chat.
I haven't seen any questions in the chat yet, but I would like to ask the two of you. A lot of this has been around for a long time. And now that we are seeing such a huge amount of women in the environmental workforce and leadership, do you see it taking a turn? And what are the new avenues that you're seeing in leadership with this shift change?
I can start, and then is that all right, Katie?
Mm-hmm.
In my experience and what I've seen, and what I've heard from other women leaders, is that women are more collaborative. And so they will tend to seek more input and really get those voices at the table. So I think that's one thing. I also think that and this could be a male-female thing, that we're coming out of a time and maybe we even grew up with it, maybe some of us even grew up with it, more of a command and control style. And to me, that is more masculine and hierarchical than a more feminine, collaborative, kind of working together to find solutions. But I think in the world that we are in right now, that a more collaborative style, in a less hierarchical style, is what we need to be agile enough that we can get work done quickly and effectively. Katie, what would you add?
I would agree with what you're sharing. And I think there's also an element, I saw the word compassion and empathy show up in the chat more than I have in a lot of different spaces, and that certainly motivates me. I think women perhaps have a different connection to what makes people human. And so while that's a generality, of course, men can have that too. I think women are leading more with the soft skills. And I even hate the phrase soft skills. I think they're people skills and human skills. And so I'm curious how that conversation is going to change. My hope is that we can get away with let's throw the title soft skills in the trash and call it human skills. Taking time to slow down and see people and what make them tick. It's one thing to have a strategy and a spreadsheet, but we often say like people are so people-y, and that's where the challenge is in a lot of this leadership work. So I think women perhaps have more patience and are more used to giving grace. And again, those are generalities, but I think there's some connection to what makes us unique as individuals and how is that going to rise to the surface.
I would like to mention that we did do a webinar series on soft skills, and that term we did throw out. And the title of that was The Hard Facts of Soft Skills. So if anybody's interested in viewing that, it's up on the NEHA YouTube channel, and it was a fabulous webinar. So let me ask you an additional question as well. So we're seeing a lot of openings in this area. People are retiring. And how do you keep that retention? How do you keep a good employee? And how do you move them through the system and mentor them into becoming a leader when there's so much uncertainty right now?
I can speak to that one first. I do a lot of work in coaching emerging leaders, and I think there's a real challenge. You're speaking to succession planning and taking on legacy, and how are we balancing what's important to the people who built the business and created the organizations and those who are going to steward them next. So again, I think there's a magic sauce in collaboration, and a willingness for that lifelong learning on both sides of the spectrum. How can you do some wisdom transfer, and how can you have a mindset for those who are getting ready to lead, or getting ready to co-create what is next? I think a lot of times when you talk about different generations in the workforce, there's this us against them. For a while it was boomers versus millennials, and I'm kind of glad millennials are not getting as much of the limelight anymore personally. But now it's millennials versus Gen Z, and how are we going to tick each other off? And these people are so entitled. And again, for me, it's what does the organization need in order to be successful? And here are some things that I have tried, and what are your ideas? And so it's a lot more conversation around possibilities and experimentation. And then there's the dark cloud of uncertainty right now. We've been talking with a lot of leaders, and I know the situations are very unique and they feel very profound, specifically in terms of, budget cuts and program cuts. And there's a lot of catastrophizing around what's ending. But I think the role of leaders really is to have hope. And again, we just came off of this conference at Work Human Live last week, but my takeaway was, what is the leader's role in helping people center? Because in 5 years, there's going to be a whole different set of things that cause uncertainty. So how do we help people stay grounded? How do we lead ourselves in knowing what we need when things feel scary? And how do we keep directing and saying yes, and instead of no, that won't work because, or yeah, but have you thought of this? And so some of it is a mindset, some of it is collaboration. And again, how do you have tenderness for those spaces that are really hard when things do fall apart? How do we grieve that? How do we hold space for what we wished to be and then move into reality again?
Yeah.
Question I have, I'm sorry, Erin, let me jump in real quick here. Everybody now is expected to do more with less. And how does that fit in to becoming a leader and figuring out how to do more with less and helping your team not reach that burnout?
Yeah. And I was thinking about this a minute ago, even when Katie was talking, and I think it's about being intentional. Whether you're intentionally mentoring or, helping somebody come up, deciding what to delegate, for example. But also when you're trying to do more with less, I think you need to be intentional about that as well. Like, it doesn't help to come in with, like we were saying, in some of the myths about I need to do it all, I need to be it all. You can't, that's not realistic. And so taking a note out of Katie's, stay grounded and then decide what's most important and decide what can fall away. Really, this could be a day by day or week by week decision that you're making. Like, okay, this is what's on the table this week. This is what we need to handle. And here's what we're not going to do this week. Or here's what we're going to put off until next week or next month or next year. We don't have to do this right now. So I think being deliberate about that. Where I see people falling into a trap is they get so head down in the day to day that they don't take a moment to pause and make intentional choices. And I see yes, definitely older generations have the experience of weathering the storms, which is why it's so important for leaders to model that groundedness and to not like spin out, right? Yeah.
You had mentioned before of feeling empowered enough to speak up, that I have all this on my plate, you're putting more. What do you want me to do and what do you want me not do? Because
Yes.
clearly I can't do it all. So in that case where both of you were speaking earlier of the imposter syndrome and learning that you do need to speak up in those situations. So we have just a few minutes left. So I'm going to have you go to your conclusion, and what are your last comments to everyone?
Well, so we wanted to invite you to grab your pen again, and I know we do only have a couple of minutes, but think about your leadership, and you can call it an action mini plan if you'd like. What would you want to, based on today's conversation, what is something that you would like to continue, start, or stop? So jot some idea, an idea or a couple ideas down about that. Think about what could get in the way of success. Maybe it's what we were just talking about. Like, you need to speak up and say, here's what's on my plate. Help me decide, what I do and what I don't do at this moment. And then ask yourself, what can you do to succeed anyway? And then Katie, is there anything you want to say about this slide? Because I do want to show them the resources slide as well.
I think those are great summaries. Go ahead.
Okay. All right. And then as far as resources, so Valerie Young wrote this book here, The Secret Thoughts of Successful Women, that is all about imposter syndrome. There's also a short video that I've got linked there. The KPMG report is good. And then I really wanted to recommend this book, which both of these I got from the library. This is called Junctures in Leadership, Healthcare and Public Health. And this has 13 profiles of women leaders in healthcare and public health. And I have super been enjoying reading about these different leaders, like the ones I mentioned at the beginning. There's also a fun picture book called My Monster Mungo that is also about imposter syndrome. So just to wrap up, we'd love if you could, can you link those resources in the chat, please? I'll let Katie work on that. If you want to throw into the chat your like a next step that you're taking away, a takeaway or a next step in the chat, we'd love to hear that. All right, so we'll wait for those to come in, and then just want to say, in terms of closing comments, we really appreciate the opportunity to be with you today, and we love helping people on their leadership journey. So feel free to email us if you'd like to continue the conversation. We're happy to do that. So thank you all so much for being here. We hope that you can bust out of those leadership myths and set all that imposter syndrome to the side when it crops up, because it inevitably will. It does for all of us. Oh, I'm glad I'm not the only one who has imposter syndrome. Thank you for that in the chat. Yeah. All right, good. Well,
And
yes.
thank you both, Erin and Katie, for taking time out of your busy schedules and joining us today. And we hope for the attendees that you have enjoyed this session. And we ask that you please take a few moments to fill out this short survey. Your feedback is instrumental in allowing us to bring you the topics you need and to complete our mission at NEHA, which is to build, sustain, and empower an effective environmental workforce. And we hope everyone enjoys the rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you.